We are moving on to the next item in the agenda, which is a very interesting and important one, to tell the truth. And it is dealing with the issue of the Caribbean Internet Development Foundation, which is a proposal that is being put on the floor for general comments and discussion, for basically related to the future of our efforts towards Caribbean internet development. The presenter is none other than the Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, Ms. Bernadette Lewis, who spoke yesterday and who has made an intervention already today. So I will ask her now to begin her presentation. And when she's finished, we'll have a time for some general discussion, and your comments are solicited at that time. So SG, please go ahead with your presentation now.
Right. Thank you very much, Nigel. And again, good morning to everyone. You're hearing me? Yes? There's some feedback. Right. In 2013, at the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, that was in the Bahamas, I had presented a new approach for Caribbean internet governance. And I will be talking about what I'll be expanding on what we discussed at that point, and also getting the feedback from the community of stakeholders who are here at this point in time to really fine-tune and crystallize this new approach. By way of introduction, the CTU is an intergovernmental organization. It was established by CARICOM heads of government in 1989. And our primary areas of focus are, right, yes, back one. ICT, harmonized policy formulation, capacity development, regional ICT project coordination, Caribbean representation, and we also serve as an industry watch. Now, in 2005, we were approached by the Deputy Secretary General of the CARICOM Secretariat, and she requested that the CTU address all matters of internet governance on behalf of CARICOM. As you know, the CTU, our membership is beyond CARICOM. We have 20 member countries. So we have taken up the responsibility for internet governance on behalf of not just CARICOM, but the CTU membership. And this is how the internet governance activities in the Caribbean currently operates, right? So I call it the mechanics of Caribbean internet governance. And the CTU, we do a lot of mobilization of stakeholders. We convene the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum every year, and we're now in the 13th year. And coming out of the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, this community of diverse stakeholders have crafted our Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework. I suspect it might be the only one in the world. And this document, it's a living document. It's now in its third, edition. And the CTU has taken on the role to implement the policy framework. So a lot of our activities are geared towards implementing the things that are specified in the Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework. I want to make a distinction here at this point in time that the policy framework is not the work of the CTU, it is the work of the Internet Governance Forum here in the Caribbean, right? And what its policy formulation is part of our work. We have taken the Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework and we have put it into the CTU's processes so that this document would have been approved by the highest decision-making body within the CTU, the General Conference of Ministers. So we do the mobilization, we convene the Caribbean ICGF, and we implement the policy framework. And another thing that we have tried to do is representation of the work that we do in the Caribbean at international internet forum. So this is how things currently work, and we hope it is for the benefit of all stakeholders across the region. So these are the sort of things that the CTU would have done over the course of from 2005 to 2017. As you know, we were the 13th year of the annual Caribbean IGF. We've done 4 ministerial seminars on internet governance. We've done 23 internet governance sessions in 18 different Caribbean countries. We co-hosted the South School on Internet Governance. We've done 6 workshops on internet governance, technical and policy issues. We have an online CIGF forum. We have, as we said, we have the harmonized Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework. We've done 18 workshops in 14 Caribbean countries on internet exchange points. We've done many workshops on IPv6 adoption. We are struggling. This is an area that I confess we're struggling with, the whole issue of content creation, indigenous content creation. And of course, new business models for the internet economy. We've done some workshops on those things, but a lot more needs to be done. And I want to mention also, remember this coming out of the WSIS, this Caribbean Internet Governance Forum precedes the global United Nations IGF. And consequently, the global community did not see us for whatever reason, because we were in front of them in a certain sense. I don't know how else to put it, but so it's only now that we are building relationships with some of the United Nations, some of the global structures that are being established now for internet governance. But I would like to say very, very early in our career, this internet governance path, we've had the unswerving support of organizations such as ARIN, LACNIC, ISOC, and ICANN. They have stood with us over the course of this journey and enabled us to do what we have been able to accomplish between 2005 and 2017. And as a result of this work, we can point to some achievements. There's certainly a greater awareness and understanding of internet governance issues. There's a greater engagement of ICT stakeholders on internet governance, increasing awareness of and participation in global internet organizations and fora. There has been an improvement in critical physical internet infrastructure, the 12 IXPs, and of course IPv6 awareness and its adoption. I need to say that I failed to mention 2 other organizations that have been standing with us: Packet Clearinghouse and Congress WBN. And I want to also make particular mention of people like uh, Carlton Samuels, Jacqueline Morris, um, Dev Tilak Singh. His name was called this morning, it's just gone completely from me. Our friend, he was the chair of the GAC, yes, and others who have been involved in this process, Tracy Hackshaw, sorry, for a very, very long time. And they have consistently supported these, the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum and the work that it has been doing. But there's a lot more to be done. And certainly we need to accelerate the pace of what we have been doing. We do not have the luxury of time and sitting back, and the world is moving ahead at a phenomenal pace. So there is a need for definitely accelerating the pace of the advancing our Caribbean Internet Governance agenda. So next slide, please. We've identified a number of challenges based on the mechanics of how the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum has been working. And remember, we are primarily, the CTU is primarily an intergovernmental organization. And what we found was there's a insufficient attention to and visibility of internet governance issues at a national level. And we have to remember too, our primary members, who are the governments of the region, they are changing every few years. And it's a case of constantly bringing this notion of internet governance to their attention and engaging them in a way that spurs action at the level of the governments. Then we found that, yes, we do a lot of work on the ground, but our reach, the reach of the CTU as an implementing organization, it's limited, and that we are unable to impact on a national level the way that we would like to. And of course, we have found, and I'm speaking specifically here to our government stakeholders, there may be a lack of capacity or organizational strength to really benefit, to take advantage of the work that is being done at the regional level. And then, of course, the dearth of skills and weak pathways for advocacy. How do you might have a number of people who are interested in internet governance. How do they get their views? How do they translate what they see needs to be done into action? So there are weak pathways for advocacy on internet governance issues. So consequently, we recognize there's a certain disconnect in terms of what we are doing at the regional level and what's happening at the national level. And of course, I've mentioned this insufficient capacity of persons working in the area to represent their countries and their regions at international fora. And consequently, you have this core of people. I think it's certainly increasing now, like the Devs and the Jacquelines and the Carters, who are carrying a tremendous burden, trying to represent the region and participate in a process. And of course, our partners, they also are doing their interventions in the region, but these are largely uncoordinated, so that there is a sort of scattershot approach to the whole issue of internet governance in the region. And I'm not saying this is not a criticism, this is just a reality of what we're seeing, because we are some of the people doing the interventions as well. So there is a need for coordination, and there's a need for harmonization, because our countries are at different levels of development, of sophistication, and we need to move forward as a harmonized region so that we're all going down the same road and we're all facing the same direction, right? So these are some of the challenges that we found when we did a sort of critical review of what was happening in the area of internet governance. Next slide, please. So this slide shows where we are at this point in time. This is the from, and this is what we would like to migrate to. So on the left-hand side, we see this CTU supporting the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum and doing the consultation, mobilization, trying to do capacity building, planning, execution, monitoring there. But this, we need to accelerate the work that is happening at this time, and we want to move to a situation where we have a Caribbean, a foundation that is dedicated to internet governance, of which the CTU will be one of the critical stakeholders. So we want to establish a non-profit foundation that is going to support the Caribbean internet governance process. And associated with this foundation would be the national IGFs. And the foundation is going to be responsible for convening the Internet Governance Forum every year. And it will also be responsible for proliferating the establishment of national IGFs and also to support their development and receive their inputs so that they work. It's a sort of symbiotic relationship so that at the end of the day, you have this coordinating foundation that is going to accelerate the work of the Caribbean Internet, of Caribbean Internet governance. Now you see in this particular slide, we have CTU as being just one of the many stakeholders. And I want to say it's not that we don't like what we're doing, but because we are primarily, our primary members are governments, people tend to sort of look at us and say, well, this is actually it happened. It has happened in the past. This is a government trying to take over, but that's not the case at all. We have tried to be as objective and participating in the whole process as a stakeholder, and we would want not just to be seen as another stakeholder, but we will also do our part in accelerating this new vision for Caribbean internet governance. Okay, could you switch to the next one? Right, and this is sort of what the Internet Development, Caribbean Internet Development Foundation would look like. And I think it answers many questions that I've heard over the course of the last 2 days. Someone asked about regional coordination, and we see that this is a role for the foundation to coordinate, to spearhead the education. And it's not just education and training for the sake of education and training, but it is to educate and train with a view to implementing something. So, for example, because, as I said, our primary members are our governments, what we would like to see, and I think Nigel mentioned yesterday, is that governments are early adopters of IPv6. And if we could get our governments on board, and our governments are, as Nigel perhaps rightly said, among the largest customers of ISPs, it's quite possible. If we could get our governments on board, it catalyzes a process for the private sector and everybody else to get on board with IPv6. So how we envision that is that we are going to be working and really pushing with our governments, and we will depend on our partners who have been with us to help us with the training and putting things in place to enable those national teams to do, right? So we're hoping, while we recognize that every national IGF will have its agenda of priority areas, because the countries are very different. And I think Jacqueline spoke very yesterday when she spoke about the Trinidad and Tobago IGF. You know, she was very clear that there are priorities that they've identified. But we would also like to think that there are things that have to be done across the board for which we could be collaborating and working in some coordinated fashion, so that all of our countries are progressing on the road, on the pathway. And one of the things that we have found exceedingly beneficial is that we could work, if not the whole Caribbean, let's start with a sub-region of 4 or 5 countries. That works exceedingly well. I think I heard someone mention the CARSIP project. And one of the lessons from that was the benefit of working collaboratively as countries. We may not have all of the countries, but certainly 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 could work together. And the foundation could perform this coordination role. So so we will be engaging, as I think you can see, the foundation, it consists of many diverse stakeholders. Deidre raised an issue this morning and spoke about the legal implications, the policy implications. It's not just technical issues, right? We need to speak about privacy, the impact of social media on society. So it is that the foundation is going to bring together the expertise in many areas that would be able to inform how we go forward and what we need to address. So we have, and I'm hoping, I'm thinking, and this is something that we really need to discuss with some of the other stakeholders. For example, I said that the foundation would be responsible for the CIGF, and there's another XXX box there. It could be that the foundation could undertake to host things like CARIBNOM, which does those regional training interventions. So this is the thought we have. And also, someone also asked how, I think it was Barbados yesterday, how does, what happens in the CIGF, how is that reported, or how do we input it to the larger global, the construct of internet organizations and internet governance structures? As I said, the CTU has done some representation. At times, there's a huge cost that we just cannot make, right? But we envision that the foundation could provide those sort of liaisons and reporting and receiving of information that is passed on to the national IGFs and reflected in the discussions of the CIGF and other fora that are currently exists in the IG space. So the point of the matter is there is a coordinating body dedicated to internet development that will deal with all of these things. There is a whole issue of sustainability. In the initial, this CTU will continue to sort of facilitate the establishment of this foundation. We will be depending on our partners. And I think for our partners who have been with us, I believe that the value would be the coordination that this foundation would bring to the whole region. So instead of you having to deal with 20 countries across the region, find who the contacts are and work with them, you now have a focal point that can direct and more efficiently utilize the resources so that we could accelerate the whole issue of our internet governance agenda. And you see under each IGF, of course, they will have their activities, they'll be doing consultations, the planning, the capacity building, the mobilization, and so on. And the stakeholders, it's a multi-stakeholder forum, and they receive benefits from the foundation, and they would also be able to share their experiences so that what happens at the national level can cross-fertilize other IGFs across the region, and really we benefit from each other's growth and development. I think another comment that someone made was, I think it was again Barbados, the whole issue of national IGF tripping over their feet to get things done and tripping over each other. If you have a coordinating organization, the foundation, we can certainly streamline all of these activities in a coherent manner that builds, that is building, not a scattershot approach, that's so we build, and then I think we will see an acceleration of the internet governance agenda. And that is my overview. I'm very happy that we're having this opportunity to share our view with you. I think in 2013, when we spoke about the new approach, people were fairly receptive, but we would want the inputs of other stakeholders so that this is truly the Caribbean Internet Development Foundation and not just the concept of the CTD. So I end my presentation there. And we will go into a time of discussion. I believe that this is a moderated discussion that will follow, and I'll do my best to answer questions. And of course, I want to hear your views and your inputs. I want to know what you think, how you think it might work better, and so on and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, SG. Please leave up that slide while we are discussing so that people will have it in front of them. So, okay, I'll open the floor now to comments on the presentation. I see Jacqueline's hand up first person, so please go ahead.
Hi, Jacqueline Morris, Trinidad and Tobago MAG. Well, my question is about MAGs, and where do you think they will fit in the kind of org chart that was shown a little while ago?
Is the mic on?
It's on by me, yeah.
Okay. Just ask the question again.
Okay. My question is, in the little kind of org chart that the Secretary General showed, where would groups like the TTMAG, the national multi-stakeholder advisory groups like us, where would those fit in?
Okay. If we bring back up the chart, right? TTMAG or one of you see at the bottom there where they have the NIGFs, right? Those would be the multiple national internet governance fora in Trinidad and Tobago, in Barbados, in whatever countries of the Caribbean they crop up in. There was a chart before that which showed the two kind of org charts, and there was a linkage from that NIGF level up to the foundation, right? There is a slight omission on this chart, and I'll just kind of point it out for the people in the room. There is also supposed to be a little link here as well, right? So links from down here into the CIGF and into the Development Foundation. So the national mags, as they might exist, would be down at this level, and they would be able to contribute to the development of the CIGF and also into the foundation. You might find some of these people serving in the foundation. And if we go to the second to last slide, please. Right. These diverse stakeholders that are mentioned here, these would be direct contributors into the, the direct contributors and stakeholders or members of, maybe rotating in and out depending on territory and so on. But this is the kind of feedback we want to hear. What are some of the suggestions and that sort of thing? But the provision is made for the NIGF to take part in the work of the Development Foundation.
Except that the MAG is broader than the NIGF is why I was asking.
Sorry?
The MAG is broader. The IGF, like the TTIGF, is a portion of the MAG.
Yes.
The MAG has a broader focus.
Right.
So if we have a focus in other areas, we would be able to fit in that way as well as via the IGF.
Well, certainly this is meant to be an enhancement of the management of the IGF process, right? So if at this level, the NIGF is part of what the MAG does, MAG would be able to influence this IGF process through its involvement with the national IGFs, right? So no one is really going to dictate or suggest who would represent particular countries or give influence into this development foundation. It's the countries themselves really that would have to nominate people, make suggestions, as the case might be. So the national mags, I'm saying, will have, through the NIGFs or possibly even otherwise, have the ability to contribute to the work of the foundation. And if you could make a specific suggestion if you have one. Okay. We have online from Barbados and Simmons. All right, let's get an online comment. I note Rudy here in the room, and I think I saw Albert as well. No, I saw somebody around the side though. Okay, so let's go online, and we'll start with Barbados.
Good morning again for Barbados Hub, and I want to thank the Secretary General for her presentation on the Caribbean Internet Foundation, Development Foundation. Just a few comments from us. We feel that the foundation should include a definite and clear focus on building up the technical community within the Caribbean. Technical community within the Caribbean, so that we have a focus on the development of standards, the building of technical resources and infrastructure, the technical know-how with respect to things like autonomous system numbers, IXPs, DNS, DNSSEC, etc., so that we have a cadre of professionals who are able to represent the region on the global technical level within the discussions like ICANN and so on. But also have the capacity to come back to the region to implement real structures, real infrastructure that would support a more robust Caribbean internet. We also had a question with respect to how the foundation would be staffed. Are we looking wholly and solely at volunteerism, or is it envisaged that it would be staffed at some level where it can receive the sort of attention that this kind of work, the scope and scale of this, of the objectives would dictate that I think, you know, there be someone at least permanently employed to advance the objectives. And also the financing models, we weren't quite clear on how it was intended that this would be financed. So I will stop there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Maybe I should stop here too and see if the SG wants to comment on anything that has gone on, or questions raised so far.
Definitely. No, I'm sorry. The first comment, I don't think we heard it clearly, but I understand that, yes, Trinidad and Tobago is saying that the MAG is, the IGF is a subset of the MAG. Fine. We're not dictating who is going to represent the interests of the countries at the foundation. Right. That's the first thing. Rodney, good to hear from you. The whole issue, the objectives, we posted, I don't know if you had the opportunity to see it, but there is a document that captures the objectives, and the whole issue of training is one of the main objectives of that document. It also speaks to developing, to cultivating a class of people who could represent the region at international fora. And all of that has to do with trading. We will have to trade, because you know how it is sometimes when you go to these meetings, it sounds like Greek. And it's just way above our heads. My first ICANN meeting I was left in shell shock. Some of the issues that were raised, just way beyond our comprehension. So a lot of work has to be done in cultivating and training the kind of expertise, not just to represent, but to do the work. And I mentioned earlier, it's not just trading for the sake of trading. It is trading geared to enable people to implement across in their countries, in their companies, in their environment. And to the extent that we could coordinate this trading across the region and schedule it and plan it in a way so that you see meaningful progression coming out of the training. That is what we'd like the foundation to do. The third question you asked with respect to the staffing, yes, absolutely. There will be a staff. As I said before, I think I may have mentioned it before, the CGU will facilitate this process. And the time will come when we will just take hands off, because the thing has been established and grounded and functioning as it should. With respect to the sustainability in the document, it does speak to sustainability. We are asking some of our partners to support this work. And as time progresses, we envision, as you build capacity, we heard of there are real opportunities in this environment for new sources of revenue, new types of revenue streams. And those are things that we would like the foundation to point to, that after, you know, the national IGFs, just by virtue of the benefits they receive from the foundation, we would like them to make some sort of contribution to its sustainability. And that's how we envision the whole issue of sustainability being addressed. There is a section in the document, in the concept, that speaks to sustainability. I think I've covered everything, all of the issues that were raised thus far.
Yeah.
So
yes, I could take it from there. Yes, indeed, and we should recognize that the partners are at present making contributions by way of sponsorship. So if we have a foundation that is coordinating the work around the Caribbean, we could probably find that they might also be disposed to make their contributions through the foundation. Rudy, I will defer to the remote participant from St. Vincent. I don't think we've heard from them for the duration. So if St. Vincent could take the floor now, please. Remember to unmute your mic.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, good morning. We had sent through a question previously. We were asking where the Secretariat will be established, where it will be based, and how it would be funded. I think Barbados came in afterwards and asked the second part about how it would be funded.
Okay. Could you two identify yourself for us here in the room?
My name is Rohan Providence. I'm from ISOC SVG.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we've reached a stage where we've decided where it would be located as yet. From what the SG said just now about the CTU facilitating the process, one could infer that maybe the CTU Secretariat could be a place where some initial resources could be housed, but that need not be the final sort of configuration. But there is no specific provision or suggestion as yet as to where the foundation would be located. And I think she did address the question about the funding. So let me hear from Rudy, please.
We have one last question. Will this be
yes, go ahead.
at the Ministerial Council so that we could have policy backing?
Could you repeat that, please?
We're asking if it's going to be adopted at the Ministerial Council level so that we could have policy backing.
It's an interesting question. Maybe not, given that this is more a multi-stakeholder type of undertaking. What might have policy backing at the CTU ministers level might be government's role in this, right? Government is a stakeholder. Government could decide to support it to the extent that they might feel is appropriate. So if it is that we can get a harmonized view from our member governments that, yes, we want to support this and support it to this or that extent, I think that would certainly help facilitate the foundation and its sustainability. But I would say it's not a requirement that the foundation as a whole get the blessing or the approval of, it doesn't require really the approval of any specific stakeholder because it's a team effort. SG wants to respond to that as well.
Yes, Nigel. I just want to add to what Nigel said. And because the governments are one of many diverse stakeholders, and that's why we are looking to establish this as a not-for-profit foundation. It sort of creates that distance that I think is necessary. Now, as I said, the CTU will be a stakeholder in the foundation. And therefore, the policy decisions that come out when they convene the CIGF and whatever other fora that that may be convened under the foundation, we will take that to our ministers as we did for the policy framework that currently exists. And I think once I know that this third edition is final for the time being, we'll take it again to them. So I feel there is some merit in keeping that distance, but the CTU is still part of the process. So the decisions, we could take those, the policy issues and other things, we could take to our general conference ministers. With respect to the As I said, the CTU is prepared to facilitate the establishment of, and we will hold hands until it's established. So if at this point in time, we would be happy to provide some office space. We have sort of an eye on something that we could use to house the foundation and the beginning staff. But until it's completely established, the CTU is prepared, as we have done over the last 13 years. We will continue facilitating and making things happen. And that is our position. We believe in internet governance. We believe that a lot of work has to be done in terms of impressing the importance of the internet and its resources on our member governments. There's a lot of talk, lots of talk, but not sufficient action. And it might even work in our favor to have the foundation speak, because sometimes, you know, it's very difficult to receive instruction or direction from people who you are very close to. So I think there's benefit in having a foundation that is a little removed from our governments.
Okay. Rudy, you still had a question?
Yes. Yes.
Or comment? Sorry.
I'd really just like to relate to Secretary General Lewis the fact that from a multi-stakeholder point of view, and personally, I really do like the concept of this foundation. And I think it's a wonderful way to progress regionally. The question that came from St. Vincent was an interesting one, because I also wondered, within the context of the CTU, if we look at the global governing context, we also see that every country, whether or not we, in the region, we're not there yet, but every country has a government advisory person, every country sits on the government advisory board, right? The government advisory council, which then interacts.
At ICANN you're talking about?
The GAC.
The GAC, okay.
Yeah, which then has a relationship with ICANN, right? So I'm also looking regionally and saying, okay, so the CTU then, what is the relationship between the GAC members in our region and the CTU, right? You with me?
Yeah.
Right? And how does that tune work? You know, what's the play on that? You see, I'm also and it's in relation really to the question that was asked, and going on from that is that I've forgotten what I was about to say, but basically that's really what I was trying to get at. You know, how does the interaction work there?
Right.
Because also within the context of a one space CARICOM, which
Single
the
license
ministers are trying to progress, right? Surely there's an aspect there that we have to get the ministers to say, listen, yes, we want to do this, but then we're saying is that you can't do this without an IGF, for example, or without, and so therefore there's an input there into the foundation also.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. On the GAC side, the relationship is pretty much as the relationship is even outside of the GAC. The CTU is an intergovernmental organization. It's created in service of its members, and basically that is what we would do in any particular situation. At the GAC, the governments are the members of the GAC. The CTU is an observer member at the GAC. So whereas, or at the GAC then therefore, we attend and we basically watch the interest of the Caribbean as a whole, and in particular the the member states that might not be represented there at a particular meeting, as the case might be. But we also support, on the ground, the members who are in attendance, right? We support them in
Sorry, when you say the members who are in attendance, do you mean the members who
governments,
are... The
member governments who are in attendance.
Yeah. So you play to the... Yeah, you play to the tune of the GAC and the members of the region. Yeah, that's fair.
You play to the tune of...
Well, in other words, you support at the level of the members of the GAC, the member countries of the GAC.
Yes.
And you represent those who may not have a representation presently on the GAC.
Well, we watch their interests. If they're not members, we still bring to them issues that we see that might affect them.
Agreed. Yeah, because for example, St. Vincent and Grenadines is not represented currently on the GAC. So if you know what issues there are, you would take up their interest and
we would bring it back through the through the CTU
so
process.
So assuming then down line that every country is represented in the region, is represented on the GAC, right? How what is then the role of the CTU in relation to
advisory as we are advisory. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
It's always advisory. we are not the voting members. Ashley wants to respond as well.
Yes, another coordination, right? Now, if you look at, yes, every country could be a member of the GAC. Different countries have different issues. Different countries are different stages of development, different levels of sophistication, right? So the CTU, when we go to the GAC, we work with Albert and we mobilize the people and we get them to meetings and we arrange stuff for them and we hear what their issues are. We explain what's happening. We explain things, so that we support them in their participation with the GAC. I wanted to raise one issue, and I am, the CTU, we are very, very, very concerned that not sufficient attention is being paid to the internet, to internet governance across the region. We are concerned. And consequently, we are doing another ministerial outreach seminar in September, the 20th and 21st of September. And Rudy mentioned it, the single ICT space. The theme for the week of activities is internet imperatives for the single ICT space. Because I don't know if it is because the ministers are not there long enough. It's like 5 years or less. We've changed a lot of ministers in a fairly short space of time. And every time you change a minister, you have to go and start that process again of education and pointing to the importance of the internet and its resources and why we need to pay attention and why we need to be at the GAC, not the gap. And these are things that we're very concerned. And as I said, all of this week coming up in September is dedicated to raising the awareness of the governments, of the significance of the internet on what they want to do and how they want to progress and how they want to grow the economy and how they need to diverse the economy and the failings of what we call internet service and the impact it's having on entrepreneurs and business and civil society. These are conversations that we have to keep having, especially in the light of the fact that, as I said, governments change and they're changing like clockwork now, like every 5 years. There's just a few governments that are still in place, but even then, the ministers are changed from time to time. The permanent secretaries are shuffled around, and we have to keep discussion about internet governance on the radar, central to the whole discussion about ICT and creating an enabling environment and all the possibilities, how we leverage the potential of the internet. This, and we are committed to it, this has to be done. And we are sort of conceptualizing the next round of roadshows, which serves as a vehicle for having these discussions, because we have to accelerate this process. I am the CTU by itself, in this current mode of operation, we cannot continue at this pace. The process has to be accelerated, and there's a lot more work to be done. Yes, the CTU has a very small staff, and we're very nimble, and I'm proud to say, we're very, very nimble. We're very resourceful. We dream up things to make things happen. But the kind of thrust that is necessary at this point in time, we cannot carry that. We would really need to have a foundation that is dedicated, and it's going to lift the burden of a lot of other players if we can have a facility that is dedicated to these sort of interactions. And the education, capacity building, they are just vital to the whole process. And we see this as a truly multi-stakeholder endeavor. And, so my question is, Rudy said, yes, he likes the idea. Is this an idea supported? And we brought it to the community, because this is about our community. And we cannot do anything for the community without the community's involvement and endorsement for it. So this is why we brought this to the table. And we hope to get some feedback from you in terms of how we can make this happen, or better, or more efficient. We just want your feedback. Thank you.
I'm taking two comments from the floor here shortly, but while I do that, I want to address the internet partners in the room in particular. You would have seen in the presentation that there is a role envisaged for the internet partners to play in this foundation. Please consider whether such a role is compatible with your own rules of engagement, such that if not, we would know upfront and maybe could try to take a different tack, right? So let me go by. I saw Deidre before, Deidre before Ria.
Thank you very much, Deirdre Williams, St. Lucia. First of all, the name of this institution, the proposed institution, is the Caribbean Internet Development Foundation. So my jumping off place is there. When I did my homework last night, on page 2 of the document, in paragraph 3, challenges, the CTU has noted that in spite of the success of the work of the CIGF and the significant investments in information and communication technologies in the region, in many countries there is little evidence of commensurate internet-enabled socio-economic development. Yesterday we spoke about e-commerce. I think our group did, certainly this group did, in the workshop yesterday afternoon. The lack of, obviously there's progress. Ashel's advocacy group that she told us about yesterday, various other groups like that, Civic, where people talk with each other about IG issues. But you said something, Nigel, about depending on territory, but my observation of the way e-commerce works, the way internet contributes to development, is individual by individual, not necessarily in any particular place. And these individuals aggregate into some sort of success story for the location. In St. Lucia, the internet has been a waste of time, I would suggest, because we see shops closing, because we see people losing their jobs. And they're doing that because other people, or even themselves, have an alternative. So is the intention of your development foundation to look also into these e-commerce issues? Perhaps it's time to think about a single ICT space in a different way. Not what happens in St. Lucia, what happens in St. Vincent, but what happens to Ashel and her advocacy group. What happens to a young man I taught in St. Lucia who's made a great success of an internet facilitated photography tourism business. Another young woman in St. Lucia who makes leather sandals and sells them online. This is the sort of information that needs to be spread and shared. And I don't know if it is envisaged that that also will have a place in the Development Foundation. And yesterday, lots of us said the CTU should. I think we should stop saying that. I think we should start trying to think from we can, or we might be able to.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Ria?
Ria Yorching. A couple of points and observations. Number one, SG, congratulations. This is an extremely strategic move. Congratulations to your team. I think it is the bravest next step in the realization of the benefits of the digital economy cohesively, again, looking at the Caribbean as one union, if you will. It is also, in my opinion, the best positioned PPP, or public-private partnership, if I have to extend it to multi-stakeholderism, that we can potentially realize in the region in this regard, and that is important. I think we've been playing different sides. The CTU has done its part, Canto is trying to do its part, but again, everyone has formative members that seek the interests of their own agenda and so on. So 3 observations. Number one, I think I'd like you to consider taking a look at disaggregating the membership to its individual components. It's important as we look at institutions as stakeholders that speaking to volunteer burnout, or speaking to some of the issues that came out of the discussions yesterday. In particular, we want to make sure that we identify key resources inside of those organizations and institutions that can be shared, that the resources can be adopted in different countries, so that different countries don't necessarily have to bear the burden of having specific expertise. So disaggregating membership at an individual level, however we want to wall garden it for all to see, is an interesting thing I'd like you to consider. Secondly, the harmonization of outputs. It was also discussed yesterday afternoon, but it's also important, to Deirdre's point, harmonization of outputs and best practices to be shared. Ashel's point yesterday on the IG toolkit that can be replicated across regions, a specific focus as we seek to coordinate and implement. We coordinate and implement framework style. So documentation in a harmonized fashion would be very useful. And then thirdly, this presents a very important opportunity for both asset and resource ownership. Speaking to SG's sustainability model, with asset and resource ownership and mobilization and management, it allows for the introduction of new revenue models, monetization models that even as a non-profit can, again, not non-profit, it's not for profit, that can be reintegrated for the accelerated advancement of other initiatives.
Okay, thank you. Ash, you want to comment on anything in the last two speakers, from the last two speakers?
Interventions. I agree wholeheartedly with both of them, with both of both sets of comments. And I had made a note to mention the whole issue of the toolkit. I know Nigel has been looking at I think there's an IGF.
Yeah.
Toolkit, right?
And we actually have a workshop on it this
Yes,
afternoon.
Absolutely. So I wanted to say that we wanted to develop a Caribbean toolkit that will help guide each country in the establishment of a national IGF. But the success of the Caribbean IGF has been as a result of the CTU taking up the role of implementing agency, so that we need to develop mechanisms for us that enable us. Yes, we will have our national IGF, we will discuss, and we'll we'll have a good talk and raise the issues, but somebody has to implement at the end of the day. How is this going to be managed? How is it going to be organized? There are different aspects. It may not be one implementing body, but several bodies that are geared to dealing with very, very specific things, right? So that has to be taken into consideration. And also the whole issue of sustainability, yes? And we at the CTU, at the level of the CTU, the governments have to be members of the national IGF. And that whole issue of sustainability is a critical one, right? And I mentioned weak pathways for advocacy. When you decide something, how do you now get that as something actionable by your government, if it has to be done by the government? So these are things that, and I think when you have your workshop on the toolkit for a national IGF, these things absolutely must be discussed. And if we could develop a template and a framework so that it's not like reinventing the wheel every time, that is what we want to do. And we will do our part at the level of our governments, part of our outreach, part of our educating of ministers. We will do our part to get action, because what we've discovered in the CTU is not sufficient. You have to do your education of the ministers. So we work at the top, but you also need to work at the bottom as well. So you have a push, a groundswell that facilitates action. And there are things that the government has to do. And we have to educate them and equip them so that they know this has to be done and they'll get on with it. Yes? I'll give you just one of the examples, not that it was necessarily the ideal thing, but the whole issue of internet exchange points, right? When we explain to our ministers the value, then they started making the right choices. Oh, we need to have an internet exchange point here. And I think our most compelling example of the importance of outreach at the ministerial level was Curacao. We went to Curacao and we did a Caribbean Internet Governance Forum in Curacao, and we spoke about internet exchange points. Several spoken about internet exchange points. And the minister was present and he said, wow, we have to have an internet exchange point in Curacao. The next year we went back, there was an internet exchange point in Curacao. Yes? And that is what we need to do to to motivate at the level of the governments and everybody else. But I really believe that governments can be early adopters and they can set the tone, set the pace, catalyze activity from other stakeholders, but they need to move, right? And this is our vision. So thank you very much, Deidre. Yes, we called we've had so many, we've gone through so many names. I can't tell you how many names that we settled on the Caribbean Internet Development Foundation. And it's not just about developing our Caribbean internet resources, but the whole ecosystem that enables us to have new revenue streams, new types of businesses. As I said, we've done courses in the past. There's new business models for the internet age, and to foster, I think one of the objectives of the foundation, if I'm not mistaken, one of the objectives is to foster internet-enabled innovation and entrepreneurship and promote significant job creation. That's one of the objectives of the foundation. So the whole aspect of e-commerce, yes, people are going to lose jobs. That is a given. Automation, artificial intelligence, all of these things is going to decimate the traditional types of jobs, but there are opportunities for types of endeavors, new types of jobs, new streams of revenue generation, and those are the things that we have to explore, research, and embrace if we're going to if we're going to leverage the full potential of the internet in the Caribbean.
Yes, new skills required. Now we are really out of time, but I would like to hear from the internet partners in the room as to whether this is something that's feasible for them or not. Yes, Albert.
Okay, all this technology. So Albert Daniels, ICANN. And again, in response to your request, the objectives of this foundation are clear, and they tie in several respects with the objectives of, in my case, ICANN. And I can clearly see this as an enhancement of existing efforts. We heard a lot about what happens, with countries of the Caribbean going to the GAC, for example, in ICANN. And the role that the CTU is currently playing as a coordinator and a supporter of attendees is very good, but I see this foundation as being a formal approach now, anytime there's an ICANN meeting, to ensuring that there's that coordination of a sort of Caribbean participation, for example, in ICANN. We have a meeting coming up pretty soon, an ICANN meeting in Abu Dhabi. There are 7 GAC representatives from the Caribbean going, and 4 fellows from the Caribbean going. And what I've done at this stage is just set up a simple WhatsApp group for them to talk to each other. And it's helping in a kind of a way. But if there is a foundation like what SG is proposing here, then we can approach that in a more structured and consistent way over time so that the benefits of participation in places like ICANN significantly improve. So to allure any fears that you may have, I haven't seen so far anything in this proposal that would preclude ICANN's supporting it, but rather it looks like we could continue to support, as we have been supporting the CTU's activities in other areas like the CIGF, the roadshows, and so on.
Okay. Well, that was. I would let me just give a couple minutes to the development partners. So as ICANN, ISOC, we have Aaron and Lachnick. If they could very quickly say, yeah, no problem or whatever, such that we know that we might not need.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much, Secretary General, for your presentation. We believe that basically, if you look at internet governance themes, it's not on? Yes, okay. If you look at internet governance themes, as I did mention, I think yesterday, we have like 7 areas when we're talking about internet governance. Internet governance is not only about security, are only about infrastructure. We are talking about infrastructure, we're talking about legal, economic, social, cultural, development, security, and human rights. So it's a very broad area. So that's number one. The second one is when you look at the internet ecosystem, so how the internet is governed globally, you have also, let's say, different organizations, each one of them with different missions, but in one way or the other, they did manage to work with each other to achieve, let's say, economic and social development, which we have seen during the last, let's say, 30 years. So we see we have internet governance, the focus of what is internet governance. We see the internet ecosystem. All organizations working together to achieve or to foster economic and social development. So if we come now back to the Caribbean, I believe that basically local challenges should be addressed at the local level. And sometimes they are not being addressed because simply based on awareness, we are not acquainted what is going on globally. For example, Secretary General mentioned the case of Curacao a few years ago, 2007, and I can talk about that because back then I was the policy advisor at the regulator in Curacao, and when they came to Curacao with the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, talking about IXPs, and basically I was the person as a policy advisor at the regulator who got the task, we need to get this thing done. So I can tell you everything about it, and we did. So the next year when they came, we had the IXP operational. So local, how do you say this? Local commitment is very important because, I mean, they did present back then, but if you didn't have like a minister, local minister who said, okay, we need to do something with this, when they would have come the next year, nothing would happen because there was no local champion on this. So I think it's very important that we identify, let's say, local champions as well in each of these, let's say, 7 areas that I did mention before. And when it comes, for example, with this foundation, I think it's very important that we at least give, let's say, all these organizations that are forming part of the wider internet ecosystem, the flexibility for them to continue to focus on their particular mission as well, because they also have, let's say, their members, let's say, who supports them, that they are acquainted, that they need to explain to them why they are going in certain direction. So right now, I think it's very important for us to, we have heard what are the objectives of this foundation, but I think it's very important that we give, let's say, our members also the opportunity to think a bit about it, because I'm not sure if we can just say right now we should go in that direction, because again, it's not in this particular case, although I have my boss with me over here, but we have a wider organization and also members, people who believe, let's say, in our mission and what we have been doing. So, and again, the focus, the key area that I would like to focus on is the flexibility for organizations to continue to do what they have been doing, but through collaboration. We believe that the internet is what it is today based on collaboration. So we are not going to discuss that. We believe in collaboration, but still the flexibility should be there to get all involved, and not only, let's say intergovernmental organizations or private sector, business community or academia. All of them should have, let's say, equal footing and should feel themselves comfortable being or executing this task. So that's basically what I would like to contribute with. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, right there.
Thanks very much, Nigel, and many thanks to you, SG, for your wonderful presentation. I must ask or present my apologies as I was outside of the room while the presentation was being done, but of course, SG, you and I have had discussions on this concept beforehand, and I have had the opportunity to take a look at the concept paper. And I would say that LACNIC is indeed very amenable to supporting the objectives. They are quite noble objectives that we would like to support. I do somewhat concur with some of the comments Shernan had made in terms of where there are some issues that need to be addressed in certain areas, and therefore it should be addressed in those areas. In particular, local challenges need to be addressed locally. I would also say that one of the things which is just my personal observation is that I was hoping to see a bit more of elaboration of the functions and the governance of the structure compared to the aims and the other objectives that were stated. Because as Shannon had mentioned as well, I think flexibility is very key in this endeavor. One of the things that we should be very appreciative of is that I'm not sure if this obtains in other regions, but I think we have one of the best collaborations of internet organizations in the Caribbean between ICANN, ISOC, ARIN, LACNIC. We see each other almost all the time, much more than our family members. And we work regularly with the CTU to support Caribbean internet development. And I think that is something that is significant. It's not a small feat, and it's something that should certainly improve. I cannot state today that LACNIC will be in support of this as it is because, again, a membership-based organization, this is something that we have to take to members, and we have to get their views on. But I would say that the aims are something that the objectives are something that we do endorse, and we would like to continue discussing this in the future.
Okay, and let's hear from Aaron before we take another one.
Thank you, Nigel. Secretary General visited Aaron earlier this spring and discussed this initiative. And at that time, I believe we mentioned that obviously the Aaron board continues to support a strong internet community in the Caribbean, witnessed by our recent creation of the outreach liaison there. But any type of initiative like this will need to go before our community elected board. And I know for a fact that it has not been presented yet, but will be shortly. So I'm sure they'll be discussing it. And I feel that in the meantime, Aaron will continue to offer the support we have been giving in the past. And we'll see what the board says.
Okay, excellent. And Roxanne had been waiting for a while. I'll take Roxanne John now.
Roxanne here, Services and Grenadines. I wanted to speak on the area of sustainability. And as I look at the chart in terms of the organization structure, I'm in support of the foundation having some sort of structure to govern the internet governance. But I'm looking here at at the national level. I'm saying that the national IGF is a subset of the ISOC chapter in our case. Because since that this chapter will be a non-profit organization, an entity that is established within the country, and then the composition, academia, the private sector, public sector, civil society, same set of people involved. So I cannot see two entities being registered as non-profit or running. But for me, for sustainability, I see it will run as a subset of the chapter because the chapter already established. And the chapter focus will be wider than just this the internet governance issue or issues, right? Because, we have our mandate, of course, from the inter-society. So that's how I'm seeing it in terms of sustainability. It's possible, but it must work within a framework and as other colleagues refer to, coordination must be in place.
All right, just remember that diagram is dealing with a particular realm, the realm of internet governance. And so at the local level, the interface, I guess, is a multi-stakeholder group, which we have called NIGF. Right? Now, who puts that together? We don't really see that as a full-time job for anybody. So whoever is involved in that will certainly be doing other things. Right? So it's really a question of at the local level, identifying the appropriate representation that would go to, that would communicate with, say, the foundation, that would make the appropriate inputs into the CIGF and whatever other sort of external relationships or liaisons that might be required. Okay, so you'll probably find that the local structure is different each country you go to. But is the idea of, what we're trying to do is coordinate the internet governance efforts or thrusts or policies and that sort of thing. So the people who are involved with them, this structure is meant to set up a means for them to be communicating. And the foundation is meant to be a coordination function that we're still working out how, would have to be supported by the members of the community. SG, anything you want to add based on what you heard from the partners or Roxanne there just now?
Right, absolutely. I heard Sheridan and Kevin and Susan. Absolutely, we recognize that you have to go back to your boards. That's not an issue with us at all. Organizations, partners will have the flexibility. We recognize that you would have your mandate and your areas of focus and the things that you would need to address. That is fine. That is not an issue at all. And as Nigel said in response to Roxanne's comment, you'll be doing a toolkit on establishing national IGFs, but the situation in Trinidad and Tobago is that the MAG, the national IGF is a subset of the MAG. So we understand now from what Roxanne said that the national IGF is a subset of the ISOC chapter. So there are a whole lot of different models across the region. But at the end of the day, we would like the agency best able to represent the views to be part, to work with the foundation. And this is how we see it. And one of the aims of the foundation is really to help in the establishment of national IGFs. So we can't dictate from country to country how that body of that multi-stakeholder body is going to be put together. We can't. But we need to have a relationship with each country going down and facing the same direction.
Okay. Any comment on the governance measures? Is there any more information that could be had now?
Well, I think when we share this, we wanted to bring it to the community first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Get some ideas.
Yes, we wanted to get the inputs of the community. We are taking steps to actually have a foundation registered. Some of your inputs now, we're going to feed it into that document, which we already sent it to our lawyers for first pass, but we needed to hear from the community. So we're going to, I take it that there's consensus that this is perhaps the best way of accelerating our internet governance agenda across the region. So we are going to proceed with that. The details, we have our ideas. We have some idea of the structures of governance and so on and how it will work. That will be communicated with the partners and the communities in the coming days? Weeks? Days. I have Selby here. So we're just at Selby and Sandra and Richard. Yes, but we really, my point is we have to step up our game. We have to increase implementation. I think we are in danger of being left behind. Not that we are, just by virtue of not advancing fast enough. Yes?
Right.
And, oh, sorry, some of the work of the foundation, I think I didn't mention it, but it's in the document. I don't mean to take up things like DNSSEC, anti-spam, those sort of things, enhancing the value of national IXPs, job creation, content creation. Those are things that I think the foundation would be able to advance. Deirdre's point about e-commerce and so on and so forth. Those are things that the foundation can comfortably do that I don't think that the CTU can do without killing its staff. That's a pleasure.
Yes. Do we have any comments or questions from online? Apparently, our caterer thinks that we need a little extra time to discuss this matter. If you have the time. Yeah, well, let's hear back from Barbados at this time.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks again. I was going to pass in the interest of time, but since the caterers are so generous, we would just like to say formally that the Barbados Hub here is supportive of the foundation. So I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear in my first intervention. So we are supportive of the whole idea of this foundation. We intend, we have a number of stakeholders here, including the Barbados IT Professionals Association, the Internet Society Barbados chapter, and other stakeholders. We would open the document for comments, share it with our chapter members, and canvass their views as well, so that we can provide that feedback to the CTU in a very short space of time. We'd also like to throw a challenge out to the international organizations to put some much needed resources behind this initiative, where for example, that organizations like ICANN, they have resources available through the auctioning of the new DTLDs, in which the Caribbean region is significantly underrepresented. And we're aware that there's a fund that can be used for such a capacity if this proposal is presented in the right format and is given the support of our members who are attending the ICANN meeting within the GAC. So I would just like to throw that challenge out there, that it be one of the talking points for our ministers who are representing us within the GAT at the upcoming meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Albert wanted the floor to say that there is a cross-community working group working on that, and he can't commit anything. Go ahead.
There are over 200 million US dollars in that particular fund that Rodney is referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, right. So I'm very happy that Rodney brought it up. And this is what we need to understand. Remember that ecosystem diagram that I gave you on day 0 when we were doing capacity building? There's the ICANN organization, the staff, and then there's the ICANN multi-stakeholder community.
Yeah.
That money is not the ICANN staff's money. It is your money as the multi-stakeholder community. What is going on right now in that community is a discussion on setting up the framework for deciding how that money is going to be spent and what it can be spent on, within the scope of the ICANN bylaws and so on. So the one point that I want to make here is this is another reason why you all and the representatives of the other stakeholders need to get involved and need to be at those meetings. Make sure your GAC representative goes, make sure you yourself participate in the process, because it's not us, the ICANN staff, who will decide where that money is being spent. I have a budget for engagement in the Caribbean, so that is why I can stand there and say, well, okay, it looks like we will continue to support the foundation, because I know where that money could possibly come from my budget. But at this, when it comes to the larger scope of things within ICANN, like those auction proceeds, you are the ones who will decide whether or not any of that money comes to the Caribbean for our projects. And I can tell you, if you don't participate in the discussion, there are hundreds, thousands of other people who will make inputs and who will make suggestions as to how that money will be spent. And the end result, you can figure it out.
Right. St. Vincent, you said? St. Vincent, please go ahead.
Our interest is in the establishment of the Secretariat. First, let me say that our ISOC here in St. Vincent endorses the setting up of the CIGF. And we are expressing our interest in having the Secretariat located here in St. Vincent. I'm hoping that I see the SG smiling at us. Yes, that means she heard us loud and clear. And we're hoping that you would give some consideration, to our expression of interest.
All right, very good. Very good. Trinidad and Tobago, that's here TT Mag. Offering to host as well, I guess?
No. Not at all. Actually, having heard from you and where things fit and looking into the governance model of the thing, I would just like to say congratulations to the Carib Mag.
Yeah, it could be a Carib Mag.
The wording is dead on.
Yeah, it could be a Carib Mag. Rudy?
Close enough.
Close enough.
A little clarification here. What do you envisage the relationship between the foundation and the global IGF as a organizational structure?
Well, as the diagram showed, remember there was the foundation and there was the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum and the linkages to the NIGFs, right? So essentially the intention is that the national IGFs would get stronger and make their inputs into the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, and we develop Caribbean harmonized positions, right, which would be represented at the global IGF. Right, so it's not the foundation as a part of the hierarchy, really, because that whole IGF structure is really more for idea generation and discussion and policy, maybe policy development, as the case might be.
Okay, because what I have in my mind here is that I'm still going back to the one space CARICOM, okay? Now, we have all these ministers and the complications of the political rhetoric and everything else going on at the regional level, right? We do not know what the solution is going to be, right? But we do know that there are global and regional structures, right? Already in formation and already working when you consider the internet as a tool, as a social, as a social construct, right? So, what are those ministers going to be doing with something that is owned by a community of users? Because they can only work, I'm suggesting, within the concept of the sort of the government imperatives and how they interact with the global governance structure. So, if you get my drift.
I would say it's two different worlds, right? Remember, it's two different worlds there, right? Because the CARICOM single ICT space, yes, is a government-based initiative, but it must have input from everyone whom government governs, which is the whole community, the private sector, and all these sorts of things, right? So what government is trying to do in that single ICT space is, yes, derive economic benefits and so on, but that is being managed more in the traditional multilateral space, right? Individual countries, individual governments trying to work together, and so on. The people who are involved with the internet development, internet for development stuff, yes, government is one of the stakeholders. So government in this creating this single ICT space is looking to use the internet for its development purposes.
Well, if that is so, then they ought to give us they ought to give the foundation a subvention.
Well, they are a stakeholder in it.
Of course,
right?
and they are a major policy stakeholder too.
Yes, they are a stakeholder in it, and I mean, through the CTU, we can make those recommendations, and
well, you're in a perfect place to make them. And
indeed,
you know, we've solved it.
Indeed. Right. Are we ready? Okay. All right, folks. I think I want to thank everybody for the contributions, the inputs, the feedback. It's all, I think, going towards a good cause for us to develop an appropriate way forward that we can make sustainable with respect to internet governance around the Caribbean. If one looks at the CIGF as compared to other IGFs around the world, it's really different in the sense that I don't know that there's any other place where maybe something like an intergovernmental organization has been convening in a benign atmosphere, you know, where we're not really suspected of having any ulterior motives and so on. All right, but having said so, as the SG said, and based on this proposal, we figure it's time to move on to something even better. And your thoughts and contributions will be taken into account in the next phase, and we'll keep you all informed of the various things. So I understand that lunch has arrived, so we would be able to take our lunch break now. Let me look at my schedule and my time. 1 second. I guess the caterer didn't notice that we had a time change today from 12:30 to 12. So it's just about 12:35 now. The scheduled start time was 1 o'clock, which is not really practical. So let's try to, however, let's see if we could do it in 45 minutes, which would mean we get back for 1:20, and we'll have our workshop related to that, fostering, at least creating that a Caribbean toolkit for NIGFs. And as we go to lunch again, for the work for the week, I have to remember always to thank the sponsors, the Telecoms Regulatory Commission and Flow here locally, and Google, ICANN, ARIN, LACNIC, ISOC, Facebook, and the IGF Support Association for all the support that makes it possible. So please enjoy your lunch, and let's restart for 1:20. Thank you.